You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome, and you are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz, and today is 3/3/21. Well, if you remember when cell phones became prevalent, there was a huge rush by the cell carriers and by independent tower operators to acquire rights on property and then to build cell towers. That turned into a mature market with a very nice rates of return. There are actually companies that went around and gobbled up independent cell phone tower owners and made them into publicly traded entities where nice returns are realized. And that seemed to be it. However, we now have 5G, and whether you think it's going to be the bane of humanity and destroy all of us, or whether you think it's an amazing technological leap, it doesn't matter because it's coming. The carriers are desperate to set up new towers, and a whole additional rush is now in place because, according to my next guest, somewhere in the next several years, they're going to need another million sites or locations because 5G needs more towers, more antennas than regular 4G. So thinking about that could be a whole new land rush. You might be in an area where your real estate is worth way more than you ever thought possible because of 5G. So you got to open up your blinders. You got to take them off. I'd like to know what you think about 5G, whether you think it is an amazing technological innovation or the bane of humanity. For that, send me an email to kl@kerrylutz.com. Now I've got Hugh Odom with me. You're founder and president of Vertical Consultants. You've been working 20 years or so in real estate, telecommunications. You've been doing this for the past 11 years now. And really, your specialty is helping property owners realize their monetary rights, monetization for cell towers. So we're really thrilled to have you. And it sounds like there's a second cell gold rush underway.
Well, first of all, we appreciate the opportunity to be part of your program. Yeah, there's a new wave hitting up out there because if you turn on the TV, as you mentioned, and you see 5G and 5G, every one of the carriers is promoting their 5G networks, nationwide 5G network. Well, what they need to have is more cell sites to fulfill those promises that they're making when you see that commercial, and that means that, as you mentioned, that I mentioned when we were talking earlier, that there's going to be a need to build out. Right now, there's about 500 or so thousand cell sites out in the United States. You're going to have a need to almost double that, to double the amount you already have in existence to about 1.5, between 1 million to 1.5 million sites to have the densification that you need. That just means you have more cell sites because 5G works on basically a shorter signal than 4G, and you're going to need the densification to build out that 5G network. And as a result, two things happen, or a lot of things happen, but two things basically happen for property owners. Those property owners who have existing cell towers on their property or equipment on their rooftops that serve AT&T, Verizon, or T-Mobile, those sites are going to become more valuable because now they are kind of a hub site for this 5G network, and you're seeing a lot of modification of equipment to become that hub site for that 5G network. The second thing is you're going to need to build out a lot of sites around those existing sites to have that densification necessary. And what does that avail? That avails property owners in certain areas to have the ability to negotiate and put a new cell site on their property and generate ancillary revenues to the primary purpose of their real estate.
Hey, well, so it sounds like it's a huge opportunity, both if you have an existing cell lease, sounds like there's ways to renegotiate it, or if you're in the path and you got kind of passed over the first time, this might be your opportunity now.
Correct. So that's going to be the ability now is that you're going to have some, as I mentioned before, you're going to have some enhanced opportunity for existing and for new sites. What property owners need to understand on either side of that, on an existing site or on a new site, is understanding the value of that site to that wireless carrier or that cell tower company. We tell our clients across the country, and we deal with everybody from individuals all the way up to privately held companies to publicly held companies, like we provide consultation for Walmart and McDonald's and some other companies and their properties across the United States, is that you need to understand one basic thing is don't worry about what's being offered to you by, let's say, Verizon to use your property. Understand what you're offering them. And because a lot of times people get so focused, hey, somebody's knocked on my door, they want to renegotiate the existing lease, or they knocked on my door, they want to offer me a new lease, and they're offering me X. But look, if I offer you $2, but I'm getting $10 worth of value out of the deal, sure, you got your $2 in your pocket, but I got a $10 deal. I like that all the time. And that's what goes on in the telecom industry is the property owners don't understand not only the value today that's being derived from their property for these sites, but also how to structure the agreements to think about how to get value today and get the right value tomorrow, next year, and 10 years from now, because they need to look at them, the property owners, that is, they need to look at these agreements as utility agreements and understand it's not just the space they're leasing, but the value being derived from that space.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things that go into this. And if you want to maximize your return, you really need someone involved who knows the talk and knows what the real interests are and what the real value of your rights are, right?
Correct. That is definitely correct. It's a situation by which you have to understand what the actual value of your site is to that company wanting to lease it. Just to give you an example, right now we forecast that on average, that a property owner has an existing cell site lease on their property right now is going to be undervalued over the life of that lease by somewhere between $1.2 and $1.5 million. That's what they're losing. That's what they're leaving on the table just today. Now, that's not contemplating future upgrades and things of that nature. That's just basically saying today. So you can see the amount of money that's left on the table. And the reason being is the first thing that happens when they're presented a lease to use their property to put equipment on a cell tower or put equipment on a rooftop situation is they focus on the rent. And that's great. But we try to tell people that's the candy. Rent is candy. It's not the meal that you need to think about having over the life of the lease. You need to think about structuring this to make sure that you understand rent is not financial structure for these agreements. It is the derivative of the financial structure. So there's so much money left on the table that it's amazing. And we try to get people to understand that, look, why an AT&T or a Verizon or whoever fight so hard for that rent amount. And they say, well, we can only offer you this much versus you want this much, is they understand the value of that additional rent that if they have to pay you over that long period of time. If I told you, hey, I can get you another, let's say $500 a month in rent. Well, you say, oh, that's no big deal. It's just a small portion of this building that we have out there. I don't want to fight over it. It's not that big a deal. But if I told you, hey, by not leasing out one additional square foot, that I could increase the value of your property by $200,000+ tomorrow by snapping my fingers, you'd be interested. But people think of the small amount instead of thinking the big amount, while the other side of the table, the telecom companies understand the long-term value of these agreements if they structure them advantageous to them.
All right. So here, I got a question for you. Somebody I know, let's call him Jerry. Okay. Jerry bought a piece of property in a rural section of Florida. The prior owner had agreed to have a cell tower up there years ago and took a lump sum payment from a cell company. I don't know if it was a tower operator or a direct cell phone carrier, not sure. But they sold off the rights for a lump sum payment of $100,000. Now, Jeremy has taken the property subject to the transfer of those rights. Do you think he's got the ability to go back now and renegotiate that?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Fury Gold Mines is a Canada-focused exploration and development company committed to aggressively growing its scalable, high-grade gold assets with major drill campaigns planned across its 3.5 million-ounce portfolio. Fury is led by a management team of proven explorers and developers with a track record of success in advancing and financing project development. Fury Gold Mines is well positioned to create value for investors with low-risk development growth and the potential for a new major discovery. Fury Gold Mines trades on the TSX and NYSE American under the ticker FURY. To learn more, go to furygoldmines.com. That's furygoldmines.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
It's unlikely, but here's the thing I would say is that my background, as you mentioned, I've been in the industry for 20 plus years. I was an attorney inside AT&T. I was working for AT&T for over 11 years. And so the reason I bring that up is I drafted a lot of agreements and long-term agreements. And what you're talking about is a long-term interest in the property that's been bought out by a lump sum. So when you put anything together that's long-term, it has a disadvantage to the property owner in what your scenario is, because they basically have been bought out. And so they have very limited rights to go back in. But the way that door may crack open is that from the other side, if I'm on the other side, and I drafted that agreement years ago, I can't think of all the different situations that may occur over the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. I can't. There's no way. I can try to put as many scenarios as possible. My point being is, there may be an opportunity at some point that the tower company has gone outside the boundaries of that agreement and needs to ask the property owner for something, whether it be additional space or some right, some consent right, or something that allows that property owner to get back in the game. So in general, I'd say the property owner has limited ability to go back in, but I'd always say there's always an opportunity that may present itself.
So it's worth reviewing it, in other words.
Look, it's always worth reviewing, because the thing about it is that we've seen over the years that so many people have entered these long-term agreements, whether it be a long-term lease or a buyout of their lease, and they have these long-term, if not perpetual, easements against their property. And then you go look at it and you go, hold on. The tower company is using areas that they're not supposed to be, or they've done this without your consent. And because I have a sister, I love her to death, but she lives by the credo, it's easier to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission sometimes.
Yeah,
so sometimes, and it's sometimes not intentional by the tower companies or the wireless carriers. They're handling tens of thousands, if not more, each of these companies of different sites across the country, and it just gets delegated, and they think they have the right to put equipment there, or they think they have the right to do this, and their agreement doesn't provide for it. And I'll mention one other thing: if you don't periodically make sure that these companies are using the right areas and doing the things that under these agreements, if you don't do that and you don't bring it up to them, they will use this next word as a defense. And it's very it's acquiescence.
Yeah.
That by you not saying something, but that you just some of what's your word, you have waived your right to make a claim at this point. So it's always important for people to review these things and make sure everybody's using what they should be using.
Absolutely. And a new owner coming onto the property may not be bound by the old property owner's acquiescence, waiver, laches, have a whole bunch of terms for it, bar, a whole bunch of things. So it's interesting, and it provides opportunities, because they could have, who knows, your cell tower could have been knocked down in a storm, and then they put in a bigger cell tower with a bigger foundation, and it encroaches, right? I mean, things like this happen. Or the battery backup for the tower, which 10, 15 years ago when they were putting these things in, you didn't need as big a battery backup. Now you need 72 hours at least in Florida, and they go even longer than that. So they had to erect a structure to hold all the batteries and everything, and then bring in additional power. It could change the entire nature of your lease.
Well, the one thing I'll mention very quickly is it's not just what you see above the ground, but where we see the biggest culprit of this is where they're dropping utilities, or more particularly fiber optic lines, underneath the ground, and they miss their mark. And they go across a portion of property that wasn't originally contemplated for them to use, and you don't see it. So that's why it's always important to make sure that when you approach one of these companies that are on your land, say, hey, give me a site plan that shows everything that's out there, both above and below ground, all the areas that you're using. And again, sometimes they've missed their mark maybe by 10 feet, but sometimes they miss their mark by 100 yards. So that allows you a possibility to re-enter.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And if they did it knowingly, they're going to have to pay you back rent as well. You could
possibly have that claim.
Yeah. So certainly they don't want to go to court on these leases, because that could be a Pandora's box that could call into question thousands of leases around the country if somebody winds up with a big award of, say, like $1 million or $2 million suing them. So they're going to do their best to settle this thing under reasonable terms if they're at fault, guaranteed. Well, you've opened up a whole Pandora's box of options for property owners, both with existing cell tower leases and people who may be approached in the future because they need the densification required for 5G. People want to find out how to connect with you, Hugh, how to get an appraisal, figure out what their existing tower is worth and whether it's worth more money. How do you do that?
The easiest way is go look us up online on our website, and that is celltowerleaseexperts.com. Again, that's celltowerleaseexperts.com. We have plenty of ways you can contact us through our website, and also via phone numbers that are listed on that site as well.
Yeah. All right. Hey, well, Hugh, it's been a total pleasure. It's been really informative, and I appreciate it. I love learning new things about things that you think you know something about, but you really don't know as much as you think. And if you've got any questions for Hugh, send your email to kl@kerrylutz.com. We will forward it off to Hugh, promise. And maybe you can start cashing in on an asset you didn't even know existed, or one that's totally undervalued. And make sure you go sign up for our newsletter, kl@kerrylutz.com. Hugh, a pleasure, very informative. We'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you again for letting us be part of your program.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.